Good afternoon and welcome to the Revere City Council meeting of October 7th, 2019. Will the members of the audience please join with the Revere City Council in the salute to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Janino. Here. Here. Councilor Keefe.
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna.
Here.
Here. Councilor Morabito.
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky. Here. Councilor Patch.
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers.
Here.
Here. Councilor Rizzo.
Here.
Here. Councilor Rotundo is absent. Councilor Zambuto.
Here.
Here. And Council President Guanasso.
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
Madam Clerk, prior to this evening meeting, I would just like to make a brief statement in reference to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We wish all the women of our city and throughout the world the best of luck in not having this. And if they have to deal with it, I want them to know some men are working and fighting on their behalf, because the most important part of our world are women, our mothers, our grandmothers, and our wives and our aunts. So be prepared, men. That's the most important part of our life, women. And we just wish you all the best, and we're with you in spirit and to wish it all. Now, Linda, can I go out on Saturday? Madam Clerk. We're going to go unfinished business first.
Calendar item number 2, approval of the journal of the regular meeting of September 23rd.
So moved. On motion, all paid. So ordered.
Calendar item number 3, unfinished business. Motion presented by Councilor McKenna that the City Council and Mayor approve the installation of memorial poles for living Revere combat veterans aged 80 years or older. There is a veteran that served in World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and is still residing in Revere today. He should be honored before it's too late for him to witness this most deserving tribute.
On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 4 is the zoning subcommittee report. Dr. Christopher Page, Boston, Mass., seeking permission from the Revere City Council to expand a non-conforming structure in use, which is a dentist office at 26 Central Ave.
Council Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. President. This came before us in public hearing last meeting and then today in front of the zoning subcommittee. I'm happy to report that the neighborhood and the Dr. Page's office and the contractor, architect, were able to come together with a win-win for the neighborhood with regards to additional conditions from site plan review and the neighborhood. Everyone was in favor. The Legislative Affairs voted unanimously to accept this expansion.
Point of information.
State your point, Councilor.
I think you were supposed to go to the zoning chair for the zoning subcommittee report.
Pardon me.
Oh,
Pardon me. I was just jumping right in.
zoning chair.
But, you know, I was prepared to give all kinds of accolades to the Ward 4 Council because he did a fantastic job.
Well, I have a note before me that says Councilor Keefe.
That's okay.
I
Listen,
apologize, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have a big ego. It's not a big
All right.
deal.
Mr.
But I do want to,
You see how quick he jumped in on it. Councilor Zambuto.
Let me start by
Chairman,
saying
Councilor Zambuto.
the zoning subcommittee did meet earlier this evening, as we all know. And it was on the special permit of Dr. Page for the expansion of his dental office on Central Ave. But I do want to commend Councilor Keefe because he worked very hard on this and got the neighbors and the applicant together and had a wonderful compromise. And if this is the way we can have all the zoning go in the city where everybody's happy, then I'll be a happy man. So I want to commend Councilor Keefe, even though he jumped on my subcommittee report, for doing a great job. And really, this is a model for how we want to have these things go. When you can get the neighbors together with the applicant and everybody's happy, that's what we need to do up here. So
Thank you, Mr.
very
Chairman. I
grateful. Thank you.
apologize. Before the city councilors, shall the city council grant the relief requested, subject to the findings of the site plan review and the zoning subcommittee? A roll call is in order.
On the special permit, Counselor Janino.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Keefe.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Patch.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Rotundo. Yes. Yes, Counselor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes, and Council President Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes, the special permit has been granted.
Suspension of rules, please.
Suspend rules. All in favor, all opposed? So ordered. Rules are suspended.
Reconsideration on the hopes that it will not prevail.
On the hopes it does not prevail, reconsideration does not prevail. Calendar item number 5. Refer back to regular order business.
Next up is the Public Safety Subcommittee report.
Chairman Ira Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we had two issues in the Public Safety Subcommittee. One was by Councilor Rizzo to bring National Grid up here to give everybody an idea of how to handle any winter storms. Unfortunately, I was not present at this portion of the meeting, and I would think that it went well, and a lot of information was given out. Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman.
No, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you want to fill in on the part one. of
Oh,
how
part one, I can fill in
National Grid-
on Councilor
National Grid.
National Grid. We had a very nice presentation by a representative from National Grid, taking the place of Dan Cameron, who's usually here. And she gave a tremendous outline as to how we should be in preparedness for the winter months to come. She gave us some information as to how we could reach National Grid in states of emergency. And I think everybody was pleased with that. So with that, I would like to place this on file.
Very good. And on number two, Mr. President, 19182, motion by Councilor Rotundo about looking into the feasibility of Enforce 911 for our schools. We did have a representative from Enforce 911. The chief was here. We talked about it. Everybody seemed to be upbeat about it. And they're working on looking for the best company to bring in the software to be able to do this with the police department. So we're just, everything's in progress, and move to place this on file.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are on the vote. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered. Calendar item number 7.
Legislative Affairs Subcommittee report.
Council Chairman Keefe.
I'll speak on this unless Council Zambudo wants to jump in.
Council Zambudo, you want to take it?
This was
Not at all, thank you.
So we just finished up our Legislative Affairs Subcommittee, and this was a motion brought forth by Councilor McKenna to help create a home rule that would take away the ability to hunt within 500 feet from we'll take it away from 500 and make it go to 1,500 yards. A lot of people in Revere don't realize that you can pretty much hunt duck and fowl really close to people's homes, and that's not something that I think is conducive to the environment of this, these days. And that also was passed unanimously by the Legislative Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roll call is in order.
Roll call on the special legislation. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Keefe.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Patch.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Rotundo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes, and Council President Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes, the special legislation has been approved.
Mr. President?
Madam Clerk, suspend rules to take up calendar item number 15. Councilwoman Janino.
While we're under suspension, can we vote on reconsideration with hopes that it does not prevail on that?
On reconsideration with hopes that it does not prevail. All in favor, opposed? Reconsideration fails.
Calendar item number 15, motion presented by Councilor Janino, that the City Council send a letter to the Department of Environmental Protection requesting that Wheelabrator Saugus be held to the same emission standards as all other incinerators in the Commonwealth. Wheelabrator Saugus is the only incinerator to ask for a special waiver. Further, that the mayor be requested to send a letter to DEP regarding this matter on the city's behalf.
Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for taking this up early for our representative who's with us this evening. So this is very straightforward. Basically, we're just asking them to be held up to the same standards that every other facility like theirs is in the rest of the country. So it's something that the state representative, Rosalie Vincent, has been working on diligently. It's also something that the city of Saugus is looking at. We're all just trying to make sure that this facility, that's the oldest and only ash landfill in this area, is held up to the same standards as every other one in the entire country, with no special exceptions. So I hope that this passes this evening, and we're here to answer any questions. The state representative's here. There are also some neighbors that abut Wheelabrator. So if anyone has any questions, thank you.
Any other councilors wish to speak? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is a great motion by my colleague. One suggestion, and perhaps we can take it up at a later date, not to mire this down in my thoughts, is that we also seek at the federal level emission standings for this same site, as well as sound and any other applicable regulations that would ensure the equity that we need in this community. And if you would like to take it up now, fine. However, I think it might be better to wait and take it up in a separate motion at a later date. Would you concur?
Absolutely. So maybe we can put in a motion together and take it up at a later meeting.
All right, through the chair.
Thank you.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. My understanding is that for Wheelabrator to not be allowed would cause them to spend an awful lot of money retrofitting that plant. And if that be the case, so be it. The people down there have been putting up with, for over at least a year now that I can recall, noise pollution, all summer long, noise, polluted smoke coming out of that stack. It's insane. And again, as Councilor Janino said, if that were to be, first of all, it wouldn't be allowed to be built anywhere in Massachusetts with the, particularly that close to a waterway. So I am going to support the motion tonight, and I hope that all of my colleagues will also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Wheelabrator, it's been a nuisance to the residents down in the Pines, more especially Riverside. But who knows what kind of toxins are in the air and what the long-term effects are going to be. With that said, not having an incinerator updated because you're grandfathered in is nonsense. I think what we need to do, just like anything, any infrastructure that's 100 years old, or you don't say, hey, that building's grandfathered in, let's not make any updates. I think it's only right for them to have a proper system in place. Not that, maybe that's not the right term, not proper, but the standard that every other incinerator throughout the Commonwealth has. So I wholeheartedly will show my support and put my name on this piece of, on this resolution. And I think it's very important that as a city council, we put our names and show state agencies that we're for this. Because you know what? One person fighting for this, two people fighting for this, may not be enough for a state agency to look at it and say, hey, you know, we're alarmed, let's do something about this. But as an honorable body, and our state legislature, they see a letter on behalf of us representing the people of Revere, they're gonna acknowledge us. And I think it's very important that we do this and stand behind it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since I'm the resident expert on waste-to-energy plants in i.e. Wheelabrator, Saugus, I'm going to give a little information here, put some facts on the table. Fact is, Right now, the regulation is 185, the regulation is 205 parts per million. Wheelabrator Saugus has been operating for 25 years at 185 parts per million. Now, DEP is about to put in a new regulation that brings it, and by the way, the national standard is 205 parts per million. So Wheelabrator has been operating at 185 parts per million under the regulations for 25 years. The bottom line is the DEP just issued a conditional permit. As part of that conditional permit, Wheelabrator has to conform to 150 parts per million like everybody else. So if they don't, the permit will be revoked. So they have to come into compliance with that. So listen, I appreciate this motion. It's a good motion, but it's a moot motion because it's already etched in stone. There is no way they can operate under the new, now, there's a public hearing phase coming up next week, I believe, and there'll be plenty of public input. But the bottom line is, when the conditional permit becomes permanent, they have to comply. If they don't comply, they'll be shut down. So it's very simple. So this motion is feel good. It'll make us feel good to pass it, but it won't change the reality of what's happening up there. That's the way it is. Those are the facts. And so, they will not be allowed to get away with anything that anybody else isn't doing. And that's coming from DEP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think no one can argue or debate that having a more stringent approach to our health is a good thing. And more importantly, if within this process we can ask the DEP to increase their standards to go higher than what is currently evolved as far as parts per million for the air we breathe, I think that's a good thing. So if we can take care of that within the same process through Representative Vincent, I'm sure we can hopefully accomplish, if not one thing, but a second thing of a new standard. And that's something I'm willing to fight for, because at the end of the day, watching someone die because they can't breathe, because they have lung disease, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible death. So let's work together on this.
Thank you, Councilor. State your name and address for the record, please.
Eric Lampadecchio, 43 Tapley Avenue. Council, I just want to first say thank you for acknowledging that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
And I see you have a pink tie on.
Yes, sir, in support of a loved one that passed away.
It's good to follow the leader.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think this motion is excellent in terms of the spirit of that month as well. Some of these carcinogens that come out of the plant are cancer-causing agents, and there can be no exceptions to grandfather in such a plant based on how long they've been open. They have to meet the same safety and emission standards put forth by the state of Massachusetts. And I really think that it sends a strong message by this city council, and hopefully by the mayor, to the organization and to the Mass DEP that we won't stand for that, and that we want them to meet the same expectations as all other organizations.
Thank you. Well, I certainly think that we no longer can tolerate such a situation occurring within our community. And whatever little bit of relief we can give to the residents of our community, the residents of Saugus, the residents of Lynn, it's within our thoughts and process that we should do so. And I think that this is the type of thing that helps. I don't know how it will occur or what will occur. This is far beyond my scientific knowledge. But I certainly know one thing, and the experts would fault this, but proof is in the pudding. In the area I represent by the marsh, I can't tell you how many folks down there live with cancer. I can't tell you how many I've lost with cancer. So, and I lost some young friends through cancer. And we live adjacent to the marsh. The incinerator blows up, blows our way. We don't hear the noise as loud as the folks do down in the Pines and Riverside. But I certainly get a mumble, but I get the breeze, I get the wind. And we know, and people lose sight of the fact, when there's a major fire in a certain area, like say in Chelsea, now Chelsea's a distance away. You see the winds blowing, and you're tasting, you're smelling these fumes. So this is the same thing that's occurring at this incinerator. And I think the only logical defense that they've issued up is it's going to be costly to our taxpayers. How costly are lives? If we can prevent one life from being lost, we've done our job. And if it's just because of money, we can live without something else, that's all. But we have to all be in it together, know that we have a game plan in place. And Councilor Janino, I applaud you, and Councilor Representative Vincent, I applaud you for taking it forward to the legislature. And I know our dear friend, the Speaker, will embrace it. He'll help this come to fruition, and hopefully we can get some relief for the people there down in the Pines, and hopefully throughout our community. State your name and address for record, please. And I certainly get a lot of communications from you. Loretta, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Loretta LaCentra. I live at 30 John Avenue in the Riverside neighborhood. I want to thank you, Jessica, for this letter agreeing to Mass DEP's draft decision that Wheelabrator should be held to the limits and standards that every waste incinerator in Massachusetts must abide by regarding certain pollutants called nitrogen oxides. These limits are designed to reduce the amount of certain pollutants that are released from the Wheelabrator smokestack. These pollutants irritate air passages, they reduce lung function, they aggravate asthma, they inflame and damage the cells lining the lungs. They can also aggravate chronic lung diseases like emphysema and bronchitis, and they reduce the immune system's ability to fight off bacterial infections in the respiratory system. Mass DEP adopted these standards because they match or are stricter than the federal limits under the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is designed to protect public health, including the most sensitive populations, which are our seniors and our children. Even though Wheelabrator asked to be held to a lower standard than every other incinerator, Mass DEP says that they must comply. Do be aware that there are technologies that are out there that Wheelabrator can install to comply with these limits, but it's all about the money. By signing this letter tonight, you are standing with Mass DEP and protecting all of us in Revere. Just remember that Wheelabrator is not the good neighbor that they say they are. They're the neighbor that turns the stereo up so loud your house vibrates at 3 in the morning. They're the neighbor with the old car with the expired inspection sticker and the bad muffler. They're the neighbor that won't stop chain smoking in their apartment, forcing you to breathe their secondhand smoke. And they're the neighbor that empties their ashtrays on your lawn. You wouldn't put up with a neighbor that does these things, yet we tolerate and make excuses for Wheelabrator. I know you're sick of hearing from me and seeing me. I would rather you be sick of hearing and seeing me than be sick from Wheelabrator. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Representative? Press the button.
Thank you again. So I'm up here again, and it's with the same problems that we've had for the last at least 5 years that I've been a state rep. I want to, first of all, thank Councilor Janino and Councilor McKenna and Councilor Morabito and the entire city council, well, not all, but most of the entire city councilor, for caring enough about their constituency, because after all, you are the voice of the people, and you should be representing the people. And when they cry out for your help, I think it's your obligation to hear what they say, and I think that's really important. But once again, I stand before you to talk about the oldest incinerator in the country that will never, ever, ever meet today's standards, contrary to what people are saying. And that's a fact. Some people like to call us that we're talking and speaking with emotion, but that's not accurate. It is a fact that unless Wheelabrator Saugus does major modification, they will never be able to meet the same standards as every single incinerator in Massachusetts. The Wheelabrator Saugus was the only incinerator that requested a waiver. So what they're asking for, and if anyone wants the draft, I can get it to you. So the numbers that Councilor Zambudo put out were really not accurate, because here they are. This is accurate. This is right from Wheelabrator Saugus themselves. This is what, it's Wheelabrator Saugus, Inc., Energy from Waste Facility, their emission control plan. And they state here that the final municipal waste regulations from March 2018 require a facility to meet a gas limit of 150 parts per million at 7%, a source alternative limit not to exceed 185 over a 24-hour average. So they start talking hocus pocus, all these numbers to try to throw you off. But the bottom line is, it says here, the 100, and this is right from Wheelabrator, the 150 parts per million would not be achieved without major modification of the existing burners. In particular, Saugus municipal waste boilers are an early European design that incorporates a low-profile tail-end boiler configuration with a single pass short waterfall. The older tail design and short furnace limits its ability, blah, 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 blah. As such, this facility is applying for a source-specific alternative limit of 185 parts per million for a 24-hour period. So 185 parts per million is not 150 parts per million. I don't know how you can say that that's what it is, because it's not. It says it right here. Certainly.
Representative, you just make your
It says it right here in their application.
Make your presentation.
It further states in their application that the facility believes that the best available retrofit technology, BART, based on emissions limit of 185 parts per million, based on a 30-day rolling average, can be met in a 24-hour average as required in 310 CMR. So clearly, Wheelabrator is asking for less. They're not asking, and they're not ready to comply with 150 parts per million. However, there are ways that they can meet that requirement, and it's with earned credits, which again, even though they may qualify for that, and that's, quote, legal to do, in essence, it would be Wheelabrator cannot meet the 150 standard. So what would they do? They could then buy credit from companies that meet today's standards or exceed, and they could pay for those standards, and that would bring them in compliance. It does not mean that what comes out of their stack is in compliance. What it means is that they can buy credits, and that would make them in compliance. That's one of the ways that they could meet the 150, but they're using, it's like the smart kid in school gets 100, and the kid that gets the 40, but the kid who gets 100 is going to give him some points, and hey, the kid's going to pass. But that's not really fair for the people that we represent in the city of Revere. So, you know, if you think about what Wheelabrator has gotten away with so far this summer, this area Revere Street, Lower Revere Street, Point of Pines and Riverside was inundated with noise. Noise because they can't retrofit this archaic facility. It's just not, you can't do it. Recently, they had a fire. The fire went for 4 hours. People were calling with breathing issues. They were calling with throat issues. They were calling with watery eyes. The DEP emergency response team was called. They chose not to go for 12 hours until the 11 o'clock the next morning. However, when they did find out and when they did go, there was a 20 by 20 foot hole in the roof that was burnt. They said that they put it out quickly. Well, it quickly was 4 to 5 hours, and they never notified the Saugus Fire Department, which is just totally beyond not following protocol. So I think that we as a city need to hold this company accountable for what they're doing. Why should Lower Revere Street, Mills Ave, Point of Pines, why should the smoke coming out of that stack be 185 just because they can either buy whatever it is they buying their credits, or if for some reason DEP allows them to go with 185. It's incumbent upon us to protect the people that we represent, and I really think that to do less is a disservice to the people that we represent.
Representative Vincent, what the nature of this motion is that we're speaking on now is to send a letter
All
to
you're
Environmental
sending,
Protection from this Revere City Council. It doesn't have to come from anybody else. It's coming from the Revere City Council. We will ask the city clerk to draft up a letter if this goes with a favorable vote by this council, and you can rest assured, and the people watching at home, you can rest assured, this is what's going to take place.
all you're asking.
And that's all this is a letter
all
sent to
you're
the...
asking, the DEP is to make sure that Wheelabrator Saugus has the same emission standards coming out of their stack
exactly what the
as
nature of
every
this is.
other incinerator in the Commonwealth.
That's
This
what
was
we'll
the
do.
only incinerator that asked for a waiver.
Thank you. This is what's going to happen. And so I'm going to ask at this time a roll call on the order.
Thank you.
Roll call on the motion that the city council send a letter to the DEP requesting that Wheelabrator be held to the same emission standards as all other incinerators in the Commonwealth. Further, that the mayor be requested to send a letter to DEP regarding this matter on the city's behalf. Councilor Janino.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keefe.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo.
No.
No. And Council President Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes, the motion passes.
Mr. President?
Suspension of rules are already in place. They can just ask that they not be, that hopes that does not prevail.
Thank you.
So voted. While under suspension, we're going to take up calendar item number 16.
Thank you.
Motion presented by Councilor McKenna that the mayor request the DPW to pave the following unaccepted public ways located off of Broad Sound Avenue: Agnes, Ocean View, Siren, Triton, and Coral. The homeowners of these streets pay the same taxes just as every other homeowner in addition to flood insurance, and should have the right to easily access their homes during the winter months as a matter of public safety. It should be noted that all other public ways off of Broad Sound Ave have been paved.
Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this has been going on for 4.5 years since I've been a city councilor. I've been trying to get these, they're called either unaccepted streets or they're called paper streets. They're not paved. I had people tell me that all they need is asphalt on them. It would help the residents during the winter months and rainy season because it's very difficult for them to get up to their houses. There's only 2 or 3 houses on the street. We had a situation on Ocean View last year where an elderly woman was outside of her house and she fell and she broke her leg, and the ambulance couldn't get up the street because it was raining, and they had to take her by stretcher from where she fell down to Broadstone Ave into the ambulance. So, I mean, these people are paying the same taxes as we are. They don't get services, they don't get trash pickup, they don't get plowing during the snowstorms. They get nothing, and they pay the same taxes plus flood insurance, which is ridiculous. And there's only 5 streets left on that street, Broadstone, because what's happening is people are redeveloping their houses and they're paving their streets. So I think these people deserve for the city council to vote in favor of this at this time. Like I said, there's only 5 streets. I know I'm going to get a couple of oppositions, but I really do think we do have the residents here to speak, so we'll have the councilor speak first and then the residents. Thank you.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I know these streets very well. I've spent a lot of time down in Broadstone Ave. The only thing I want to make sure of is utilities going up these streets, that whatever utilities go up there, the gas, any sewer, any water lines are repaired and made proper before the paving is done. Because I don't want to see a new street put in or something paved, and then we have to dig it up for, like I said, the gas company, water or sewer lines. So I just want to make sure that, these items are taken care of before these streets are paved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wholeheartedly support my Ward 1 colleague on this motion. These people have, every street except these 4 streets have been paved and accepted. And I think it's time to bring them in line with the rest of the citizens. They don't deserve to be treated this way. And I'm going to do everything I can to make this happen.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I just want to state my support for my colleague, Councilor McKenna, and for this motion. I think it's long overdue, and I think we owe that as a service to the residents in these streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will also be supporting this. It's the right thing to do, and it's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also support the Ward 1 Council on this matter. She's been trying to get this done for quite a while, and it's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly will be supporting this. These people have just as much right as anyone else that owns property in the city to have it adequately paved. I would caution, though, that Councilor Novoselsky brings up a good point. Let's ascertain, first of all, whether or not there is water, sewerage, or drainage lines running down there. If they're in adequate shape, if they're not, let's get them fixed. Let's call in the utilities, get them fixed ASAP, and let's get those people down there some relief. They have a right to be able to drive down the street if they're paying taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. On the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so ordered. Motion to return to the regular order of business. All in favor, all opposed, so moved.
Communications, calendar item number 8, communication
No?
from
We
the
can
mayor
go.
relative to the appointment of Spencer Contracting Corp. as a licensed drain layer.
Appointment Subcommittee.
Calendar item number 9, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Diaz Construction Company as a licensed drain layer.
Appointment Subcommittee.
Calendar item number 10, communication from the mayor requesting confirmation of 2 new appointments to the Board of Health.
Appointment Subcommittee.
Calendar item number 11, communication from the election commissioner requesting approval of the warrant for the local election on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019.
On communication, all in favor, all opposed, so ordered.
Calendar item number 12, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the mayor requests the appropriate department to not award CDBG funding to the neighborhood developers until TND submits its audits to the city of Revere.
Councilor Rotundo.
Speaks for itself.
On the motion,
Mr. President.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Mr. President, I'm just curious what audits are due to the city of Revere,
Well,
if I may, through you, Mr. President.
Through the chair.
Mr. President,
Councilor Rotundo,
it's my understanding that every nonprofit that receives funding from a federal or state, or for that matter, municipal government, performs audits, and I think we should have copies of them. Thank you.
Thank you,
Is it,
Councilor.
if I may, Mr. President, it's your understanding, you don't know if that's fact?
No, I do know it's fact. My uncle actually performs
It's either
audits.
understanding or fact. You know, I don't know what.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You heard through a third party.
Councilor Keefe.
Oh, no,
Councilor,
I don't have any say on this. I would agree, and I think I saw someone was in attendance that
I'm
wanted
wishing
to
that the
comply
council
with
speak
that.
first as our rules
Thank-
order, and are you through speaking? Any other councilors wishing to speak? Come to the podium, state your name and address for record, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Rafael Maris. I'm the executive the executive director of the Neighborhood Developers, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I think the motion is reasonable, and we're happy to provide an audit. I think we've already provided an electronic copy to the city. I have a copy right here, and I'm happy to provide it to the city. And I'm always open to requests from the city or city councilors. Feel free to call me of any kind of information. We're happy to share it with you.
Well, we thank you
Mr.
very
President?
much for your attendance here. Councilor Rotundo.
Through you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. Pretty simple, correct?
You're welcome. Yes.
That's it.
Thank you, Councilor.
Not a guess.
So we appreciate you coming forward. You give that to the clerk. The clerk will allow the city council to review it when they come into the chamber.
I'd be happy to share with you. Yes.
Thank you. We appreciate you
Send me a
being
quick
in
email and I will
attendance.
respond. Yeah.
On the motion, all in favor, all opposed? As we know, it's been ordered.
Calendar item number 13, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the election department to look into the feasibility of providing voters of Revere with an official voter's ID.
Councilor Rotundo.
I think it speaks for itself, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Councilor
McKenna? Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is a great motion. Thank you.
Any other councilors wishing to speak on the motion? All in favor, all opposed? Oh, we have a speaker here. Come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the members. I am here as a concerned resident in opposition of this communication to the mayor. As it turns out, we don't have a voter fraud problem that not in the Commonwealth and not in the country. In fact, only about 31 people over a billion ballots cast have been found to be fraudulent or in their attempts to vote. In Indiana, in a state similar like ours, with the 6 million people in population and around 4 million voters, they implemented this program. It cost them $10 million, which for the city of Revere, if you cut the cost adequately, will be around $75,000, which I think we can probably direct to something like some census bureau, or helping the census do their work next year, given that the presidential administration has opted to cut their resources for the upcoming census in 2020, which obviously
Point of order,
will...
Mr. President?
State your point, Councilor.
Could we have his name and address that is supposedly of this?
Sure, Juan Jaramillo, 382 Ocean Avenue. 382 Ocean Avenue. So like I said, the administration has opted to cut funding for the census, which will cut funding for benefits here to the residents of Revere. If we use the costs similar to Indiana, that's $75,000 that we can use to make sure that everybody in the city of Revere gets counted, and we get our federal and state funding in the upcoming years. So I hope that the council will vote against this. Thank you for your time. I'll
Thank you.
stand for questions. Stand by for questions.
Thank you.
All right.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Brian Riccio, 3610 Mystic Valley Parkway, Medford, Massachusetts. I am a former Revere resident, went to Revere High School, and I still have deep ties to the community. I speak on this motion by the councilor merely because of the fact that it is ridiculous on its face. Voter fraud is not rampant in the state. It is not rampant in the federal election system. and I feel it's nothing more than a transparent attempt by the counselor to disenfranchise minority voters. And quite frankly, given Mr. Rotundo's racist comments in the past, it brings shame. It brings shame, sir, not upon, it brings shame upon this body, sir.
You're out of
Brings
order.
shame upon this body.
You're out of order. Hit the button. Hit the button. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Laurel Holmes. I live at 243 Campbell Avenue in Revere. I didn't come here prepared to speak about this issue tonight because I didn't know it would come up. And I have no idea what the motivations might be for a motion like this. I mean, I don't need to say any more. It's been disproven over and over again about voter fraud being an issue. And I know that we have a really great election department in the city of Revere, and that we have really great, well-trained people from our own community who work in the polls. And so I think that I can't figure out why we would want to require a voter ID, which is going to reduce the number of people who vote. One way or another, it's a barrier to voting, and I can't understand what might be the motivation for somebody wanting to reduce the number of people who are voting. And whoever put this motion forward, I would like to get some explanation about what that's for. And it would disappoint me to understand that I don't know what the intentions are of this, but I do know what the impact will be. And the impact will be that people think that they're at risk if they vote. They may be legal, they may be legally qualified to vote in the city of Revere. We have been spending years and years encouraging more people to vote, and everybody knows that greater participation in voting makes for stronger communities, makes for better communities, safer communities. So I would have us, instead of encouraging this motion, to encourage something that educates people about their civil obligations and encourages people to vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. State your name and address for the record, please.
Jessica Salinas Thomas, 44 McKinley Street. Just a few brief things I wanted to say. I'm kind of disappointed by such a motion. Our city has so many needs, and I don't think spending money, our taxpayer money, on such a thing is, it's strange to me. I also think it would disenfranchise the poor and our senior citizens and veterans who might have issues getting to a place to get access to such cards. And the other thing I want to say is I always look at the voter turnout, and our numbers are not really high in city elections. And I think what we really want to focus on is getting people out to vote and getting more people involved in our community instead of decreasing those already low numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors wishing to speak? On the motion, Councilor Morabito. He can speak last. He spoke first.
Thank you for giving me the leeway to speak. But so looking at our population, 55,000 people in the city of Revere. You know how many people showed up to our primary election? 4,000. You know how embarrassing that is? It's very, very embarrassing. We need to encourage people to vote. I think putting all these protocols in place where we have a city, we have an issue on a regular basis of having people turning out to vote. If you think we're going to get more engagement with the citizens by having this protocol of a voter ID, it's a dream. It really is. Another thing, looking at the whole voter ID, what about someone who takes an absentee ballot who is disabled or mentally challenged like my sister? Does she have to go through loops to get a voter ID? This is ridiculous. I question the motive behind this motion.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. I'm sorry that again,
Excuse me, Counselor, you spoke once, another council wants to speak before you.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to speak on the motion itself because I know there's no chance of that ever being done anyways. So, but I would like to defend Councilor Rotundo here as far as what just went on with this gentleman, call him a racist. You can't have another opinion in this world, or opposite opinion, that if you do, you're a racist. It's terrible what goes on here. This is the first time in 12 years something like that happened while I've been here. So I think he owes an apology to Councilor Rotundo. Thank you.
Counselor Rotundo.
thank you. So let's get to some facts. First, unfortunately, there have been people that have voted here that should not have voted here. And that is the case. More importantly, I'm just looking for feasibility. You don't need a voter ID. You can use your license, something that is acceptable by the city. There's 25,000 voters. I don't know how you do your math up at the State House, Juan, but I can tell you the way that we do it here in Revere is that there are 25,000 voters. And if 1% of those voters, which is generally probably less than that number, need an ID, we can use that beautiful mobile city hall that the mayor invested in and help people vote by giving them an ID. In fact, we all have IDs up here. In fact, I can guarantee that you go to the doctors, you go to the hospital, you need an ID because it is illegal to use somebody else's health insurance. And one of the ways that they do prevent that is with an ID. This isn't going to curtail anybody's vote. It's going to cost actually less than $2,500 to ensure this. I'm looking for the feasibility. I'm sure among all of us, we can come up with a library card, a passport, a driver's license, a WIC card, a card for benefits of many sorts. I can guarantee the majority of the people, in fact, there's studies that go out that show that 90% and greater of the people that vote have access to an ID.
Point of information, Mr.
State your
President.
point, Councilman.
In order to register to vote, you do need an ID. So everyone who, yes, you do. To register to vote, you need an ID. Yes, you do. You do.
No, wait a minute, Council.
Are you the election commissioner?
Point of
Council,
order,
wait a
Mr.
minute,
President.
wait.
To register
Let
to
me
vote.
just make a
Could we
statement.
just get to the point?
Just make me make one brief statement. Before this is voted on, this is going to legislative affairs for review. Counselor, you don't have the floor right now. I've asked you
Excuse me.
to just hold on, I'm making a statement. This is going to legislative affairs. This is obviously something that has to be debated. The council has a right to make a motion without being criticized by anybody what his motives are. If we were to sit here and analyze all the motions that councilors make and what the motives are, we'd have to go up to the funny farm and make a decision as to what
May
we're
I
doing
finish,
here.
Mr. President, please?
So please finish, Council, and
Thank
make
you.
it brief because it is going to legislative affairs.
Very well. You know, the funny thing is that going door to door, you notice that people that used to live in one apartment no longer live there, but the name is registered there, and that person actually voted. But yet the people in the house have been there for a year, but that person has voted. And there are 4 people that I'm going to be challenging their right to vote in this city, sir. So it isn't a guess now. And I've had this happen in the past where I've actually gotten a person who works for the DPW removed from the voters roll because he lived in Peabody. And even if you have to produce an ID when you go up to register, it doesn't denote the fact that thereafter someone can use your name. I guarantee you can get Mr. Rose up here to talk about how certain things like that have
Thank
happened.
you, Council. This is going to, we have a couple others councilors that haven't spoken yet. You've spoken twice. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Councilor already stated that they could use other IDs to prove who they are. why do we, as a city, have to produce another ID for people to put in their wallets or hang around their necks? Now, in some cases, when there's a new voter or someone that's inactive, when they go up to vote, they do have to show an ID. They don't have to do it when they register, but when they first go up to vote, they do have to show an ID of their location. So I would think that it's out of line for the city to produce another ID and have to spend for everybody $75,000, if that's what it's going to cost, to do it. You know, I agree with that young lady that came up, and there's no need for another ID to be produced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor
Point of
Powers.
personal privilege.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think maybe down the road someplace, this motion may have some merit. However, we're 29 days away from a municipal election. I mean, the election department is burdened enough right now making sure that the election runs smoothly. And it always, for the most part, does. But I think to require something like this, 29 days before a municipal election, just doesn't work. And I will not support it based on that.
Well, on the merit itself, it's impossible. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, obviously, this is looking for a study. It's going to committee. There's no way it's going to be for this election. This is somewhere in the future. And I take offense to this gentleman from out of town that comes here to call one of my colleagues a racist. Now, I want to give a little preface to that. A while back up here, we had a debate about sanctuary cities. And I made a statement when someone was talking about MS-13 gangbangers. And I said MS-13 gangbangers multiply like cockroaches. Now, tonight on Twitter, and I'm going to attack the gentleman, said that Councilor Rotundo's a racist. And when
My daughter is a racist.
Okay, but he went on to say, and Councilor Zambudo supported him by saying undocumented people multiply like cockroaches. That is the most disgusting misrepresentation of the facts, and they're both on tape. My comments are on tape, and the other people's comments are on tape, and somebody accused me publicly, who happens to be running for office, publicly accused me of saying that about immigrants. Untrue. Untrue.
And Council, this is going to go to legislative affairs. But,
I take offense to someone coming up here and misrepresenting the facts and calling one of my colleagues a racist, because none of us up here are racist. We all care about all people, and we want what's best for them.
I agree with that,
Thank you.
Councilor. I certainly think that we have a civic pride in why we run for office, and many of us have been elected several times, and people recognize that fact. You'd like to make one last statement? This is going to legislative affairs. I'm going to invite the director of the Election Commission to be in attendance when they have this meeting, and this is not going to be in effect this year. I mean, it's just impossible. So it's just for discussion purposes only. Hit the button. Hit the button.
Sorry, just a few follow-up things. I've been in Revere for about 26, 27 years in the same house.
I know you are.
And I've been considered a super voter. And this year, and I also brought my son to register to vote. He's 24.
And I appreciate that, too.
We both had to show IDs when we registered. And this year, when I just went to vote this past preliminary election, my name wasn't on there, and apparently they hadn't gotten my little census thing, and I did have to show my ID there. So I think anybody who's registered already has to go through this process, and
Okay.
we want to get, this is a great city. We need to get more people involved.
It is a great city, and we have the right to disagree, and that's the nature of what it's all about. But this, to get a resolution, will go to Chairman Keefe's Legislative Subcommittee for their review. And I asked the chairman if he would invite Diane Colella to be in attendance. Councilor, you've had more than 3 seconds, and well, Council, it comes with the business. If you can just do it in a couple of minutes, and that's it. Count. Yeah.
Point of personal privilege. More importantly, all I am asking for is this go to committee. We can use this as a framework of feasibility. That's all it is. That's all it's asking for. Whether you use a card or not, and those people who don't have either, the city can provide it. And it will not cost anything greater than
Council, that's not a point of
$2,500.
personal privilege, and
Thank you.
and you've already
Well, if I use my
stated your
point of
point.
personal privilege,
On the motion, all in favor, all opposed? So ordered. Legislative Subcommittee.
Calendar item number 14, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the city solicitor to appear before the Revere City Council to discuss the Revere Farmers Market vendor's contract. Further, that a copy of the contract be provided to each councilor.
Councilor Rotundo.
speaks for itself.
On the motion. Councilor Novoselsky wishes to be recorded as no. So ordered. 15 has been
Calendar item
taken,
number-
16 has been taken, calendar item number 17.
Motion presented by Councilor McKenna, that the city council award a certificate of commendation to Lenny Piazza for his lifelong commitment to community service and historical conservation efforts.
Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll save my remarks when Lenny gets his award. Thank you.
On the motion, all in favor, all opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 18, motion presented by Councilor McKenna, that the mayor request DCR to partially open West Street to the public. West Street has been shut down by the abutting construction company for 4 months. Due to the construction on Chester Street, traffic on Revere Beach Boulevard is diverted onto Shirley Ave, leaving it the only access to get off the boulevard. During peak hours, traffic is at a standstill, causing major frustration for drivers.
Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I witnessed this myself. Right now, West Street is closed to the public because of the construction. And what's happening is when they're doing work on Chester Street, they close down half of the Revere Boulevard. So everybody's diverted onto Shirley Ave. Well, I witnessed this about a week ago. I was stuck in traffic from Elliott Circle to the kitchen, Nick's, because it was shut down. It was chaotic. So we need some sort of side street, even if they do a partial one lane, you know, they put the fence there, but to shut down West Street, the whole street, it's ridiculous. We need an access to Ocean Ave. So I'm just asking the mayor to just partially have the construction company open the street partially, so at least we can have a one lane go down to Ocean Ave. Thank you.
That seems to be a way of life down in Ocean Avenue in Revere Beach. It certainly, I never seen it in the past when construction was being undertaken. So many streets and sidewalks have been utilized for the private construction. I've never seen it before in my life. On the motion, all in favor? So ordered.
Calendar item number 19, motion presented by Councilors Rizzo and Powers, that the mayor request the Traffic Commission to place the following matter on its next agenda: that a three-way stop sign be installed at the corner of Arcadia and Argyle Streets in the interest of public safety.
Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This motion pretty much speaks for itself. It's in the interest of public safety. There's a lot of kids in that neighborhood, and, you know, it, I think, has been something that the people down there have wanted for some time. So hopefully this can get on the agenda for the next Traffic Commission meeting. And, you know, it's a pretty simple ask. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Powers.
Speak for itself, Mr. President.
Speak for itself. Councilor Morabito.
Just want to commend both of my colleagues on this motion. It definitely is a safety concern, and so I'm very familiar with the area, as most of us are. So thank you for putting this in, guys.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Eric Lampadecchio, 43 Tapley Avenue. I just want to go on record as in support of this motion. I think it's a good motion. I think it's overdue. I think that speeding's been an issue down there for a while, and the residents would be happy to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 20, motion presented by Councilor Keefe, that the mayor request the Traffic Commission to place the following request on its next agenda: that Central Avenue be designated as resident parking only, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Residents of the neighborhood have lost the ability to park in front of their homes due to the increase of business parking. Resident parking will help direct business parking to the municipal lot.
Council Vice President Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know this will go in front of the Traffic Commission, but I just wanted to make sure the residents of Central realize their voices have been heard again. And just realizing that there's a lot of commercial business in the area. We want to divert people to use the commercial lot or the business municipal lot that's right off of Central Ave, which is underutilized. So if we are able to install this, it'll put people in the right place, give residents places to park. Everyone will be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to be on the record as supporting my colleague, Councilor Keefe. It's a great motion.
Seeing no further business before us.
Mr. President, if I may,
October-
one further business. Are
Councilor-
we voting on the last motion? This is not in the last motion.
Traffic Commission.
Right. I'm
All in favor of-
okay. on
You're not
that,
in favor
yes.
of it?
I want to speak afterwards.
It's already spoke? It's already over.
No, not on that, something else. Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this time, our Jewish folks in Revere and around the area are currently in the middle of their New Year's celebration. And this time I want to take the opportunity to wish all my Jewish friends Happy New Year, and Happy Yom Kippur. Have a good fast this coming Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, and also want to remind the entire community that next Monday, we're going to have the Columbus Day Parade in celebration of Columbus Day, and make sure you all come out and wave your flags or any nation you want to come to, because it's one for all and all for one parade, and we all enjoy seeing people participate from different countries, and certainly we'll say hello to Christopher, too, on the way. But enjoy the holiday, and we'll be back we'll be stand adjourned until October 28th, 2019. Thanks for your attendance.